นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ And blessings from a cold evening in the mountains outside Melbourne. Today, somebody came and just had a quick look at the forest where we live here in the monastery for the first time, and was surprised at how beautiful the forest was. The trees, foliage, we have a few ponds and so on. I guess forest, wherever you go, if there's a lot of trees, the forest is fairly large, then you get used to it, and perhaps it doesn't seem so beautiful. You just take it for granted, or you just say, oh, forest, yeah, I know that. I know what forest is like. You don't think too much about it. But perhaps because it was the first time this person had walked up to the trees or under the trees and looked at them, they found them both peaceful and had their own sort of natural attraction, the attraction of nature. When our minds are peaceful, quite often we notice things like that, very simple things. The beauty of nature, the serenity, could be the serenity of water, like a lake or a pond, rocks, trees, and so on. Especially if you live in a city where it's largely large buildings, lots of concrete, vehicles, and so on, then the forest can seem attractive, certainly for the first time you walk into it. And the Buddha even commented on, you might say, the therapeutic nature of the forest and the wilderness, how it helps the mind to calm down. Things like the sounds of birds, which tend to calm us down and so on, make us feel at ease. If you've ever been in a forest where there are wild animals, when the wild animals come along, then the birds stop singing for a while. So when the birds are singing, usually that's a sign that there's not much danger around. So the combination of all these things, the Buddha said, has a good effect on our mind. It makes you think. When you calm down, you relax, then maybe you can think more deeply about life, about any particular problem you have, or things that you maybe don't normally think about because you're too busy. As we know, most people say, I'm too busy, I've got no time for anything, certainly no time for meditation or anything. But if you're in a forest, well, you suddenly have a bit more time because there's not too many distractions. Not long after that, another person came to the monastery, and they mentioned how hearing about a very simple teaching from the Buddha that I mentioned during my talk after the lunch today here at the monastery. I was mentioning about how all human beings are subject to three things that they don't want. They're subject to aging, which is just natural. As soon as you're born, you get older. Everybody gets different kinds of sickness, illness, injury sometimes, aches and pains, thirst and hunger, and so on. These are just normal experiences for human beings, which we don't want, but we have to face in one way or another. And also how we all have to face death. There's nobody born who doesn't die. Everybody, having been born once, sooner or later, will have to die. These three things everybody has to face. This person was saying that they never hear anyone talk about this. They go around there. I don't know much about that person who made this comment, but they live their life. I assume they have some kind of home or place they live. They go to work, earn a living, have family, friends, do different activities. But they never talk about old age, sickness and death, and certainly not from the point of view, we'd say, of Dhamma. Just learning to reflect on these things, as just see them as part of life, as just part of nature. So they said it was very kind of stopped them in their tracks to hear a talk about the subject of aging, sickness and death. It's just new, even though they're the three most common experiences that every single human being has to face. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, whatever your religion, politics or no religion, wherever you live, whatever music you like, whatever sport you like or don't like, whatever your tastes, whatever your personality, any kind of differences, which is what we normally focus on in life, how we differ from other people and what our particular personal interests are. These three things come to us all. As soon as you're born, you age. You are prone to sickness and injury and physical pain sometimes. And then we all have to face death sooner or later. These are experiences that bring us together as human beings, in the sense it just defines in a large way what a human being is. It's a being that is born, gets older, gets sick and dies. When you look at life in this sense, or these characteristics of life, especially when you're more calm and peaceful, it tends to bring up compassion, doesn't it? That sense of, I've got to face aging, sickness and death, whether I like it or not. And it's not going to be always easy. Certainly not. Illness isn't easy. Old age isn't always easy, and nobody really wants to face death. So death is not easy. So I've got to face it, and everyone else has got to face it as well. And so immediately you have something in common when you think like this. You have something in common with other people. If you extend it a little bit, you even have something in common with animals, insects, pretty much any life form. If it ever happens that aliens come to Earth and we have some kind of dialogue with aliens, well, the one thing we can probably agree on is that life is subject to aging, sickness and death. We'll have that in common. They may look different than us if they come, and they may speak different and all that, but they're probably still prone to aging, sickness and death. Or if you believe in beings in other realms, ghosts and devas, these beings you can't see but you hear about or talk about sometimes, well, they're also subject to aging, sickness and death. Whatever realm of existence you live in, you're born and you die. Maybe you live for a long time, maybe you live for a short time, but birth and death is universal, isn't it? These are universal characteristics of sentient life. So it's something doesn't take long for you to maybe realize, everyone and me, we're all in the same boat. There's something you could even say we all can agree on. Whatever your politics, religion, favorite footy team, whatever, we all get old, get sick and die. So in Buddhist terms, you would say that's an insight, that's a wisdom, the mind opening up to understand the truth a little bit more when you think about this or reflect on it. And wisdom tends to lead to compassion. Because if you realize, this is the nature of all existence, even people you don't like, animals you don't like, whatever it is that's a sentient being, a life form, on that level is worthy of compassion. When you understand the problem you're facing, that you're getting older every day, sometimes you'll get sick, one day you've got to die. When you understand that for yourself, you can also see, well, everyone else is facing exactly the same thing. Some earlier than others, as it were. Say some people get sick today, others will get sick tomorrow, others next year. Some people will die today, some tomorrow, some next year. So in terms of timing, maybe there's a little bit of variation, but these basic experiences of humans and other beings bring up compassion when you realize, this is suffering, isn't it, in one form? Because nobody wants to get older. We all have our ideal age. That might vary from person to person. You may want to be. Sometimes people say, your physical health is probably at its peak when you're about 18, maybe. I don't know. I haven't studied it that much, but there'll be a certain age when the science, the biology says that's your peak age for the health, strength of the body. So some people might want to be that age indefinitely. Maybe that's one of the attractions of being born as a deva. Sometimes they say the devas always appear of a young age, pleasing to the eye of a young age, healthy, and they stay looking like that pretty much through their life as a deva until they die, because it's spontaneous birth, spontaneous death, so they say. Human beings are not, though. Human beings get to their peak age or their best age, whether it's 18 or 25 or whatever other age you've decided is the best age for you, but then you pass through it. You're only that age for a day, on your birthday perhaps, and then you're no longer that age. You're now another age. You're that age in one day, the day after your birthday, or that age in 1 year. I was talking to a monk in Thailand a few days ago. I just came back from Thailand. He said, he was talking about human relations, and particularly relations between men and women, and how, what are the bases for successful relationships. Nowadays we don't even say marriage, maybe just partnerships or relationships, but traditionally we say marriage. What keeps people together, what breaks them apart. And he was saying women tend to mature, not just physically but mentally, a little earlier than men. And so men sometimes, he's saying men, the ideal or the sort of average age of maturity is 33. So he's saying ideally men shouldn't get married before 33. It's a generalization, but it's something to think about. Whereas women maybe are a little more mature earlier, both mentally, often more responsible perhaps. Men sometimes have a tendency to be careless in their youth, maybe more careless than women. These are just vague generalizations, but it was just a talking point. Or maybe women slightly more responsible, mature earlier, physically tend to often mature earlier when they're in their teens. So often in the early part of relationships, say in your 20s, maybe the woman can be smarter or know more or just take the lead in a relationship quite often. And then men catch up later. But the thing is, we all get older every day, and as we get older, we also have more physical problems associated with aging. You lose over a long period of time, you lose physical strength, you lose your eyesight, your hearing, your ability to recover from injury and illness as you get older, and so on. Things change and generally go downhill as you get older. So you have to deal with that. And because everyone is dealing with it, in a way you can sympathize with everyone, even the people you don't like or even the people you don't get on with. They're going through the same things as you. Some people are going through it worse, aren't they? Some people get more ill than you do, age quicker than you do. I'm always joking around my birthday. I always joke when people ask how old am I, and I say guess, and they always say the same thing. They always say you look about 60. And at the moment I'm 62, but they've been saying I look about 60 since I was 37 because I started this monastery when I was 37. So on my first birthday, they say, "Oh, how old are you?" I say, "Guess." And they say, "Oh, you look about 60. I said, "No, I'm actually 37. So I've spent 23 years catching up. So now it's about right. So some people seem to age more than others. Sometimes it's a physical thing. They look physically older than others, or older than their years sometimes. Some people look young. Lumpur Plian, who's a monk, used to come and stay here regularly. He always looked really young for his age. We always attributed that to his samadhi. He had great samadhi, and we say great merit. His mind was very peaceful, kind, full of kindness and compassion, and very peaceful from his samadhi, and great psychic powers, and we believe he had little or no suffering. He is an Arya Pugala, a noble one. So he always looked like 20, 30 years younger than his age. So some people stay looking young, some people look old, some people look about their age. But we also judge these things on behavior as well. So maybe some people seem to be wiser than their years, we say, older than their years, speak like an old person. Often that's associated with knowledge, wisdom, but not always. Some people seem younger than their years. Some people seem like a teenager at heart, even though they might be 80 years old. So behavior is one thing. Mental behavior, how you think, how you act, physically what you do. So there are different ways we gauge this, but in the long run, everyone gets older, don't they? Everyone gets older, everyone gets sick, the body works less and less well as you get older, and everyone must face death. So the Buddha said this is one way to develop this kindness and compassion, when you realize that everyone is in the same position as you. And when I say realize it, I mean really realize it. You really awaken to that truth. It kind of adjusts your way of looking at the world. You realize, oh, everyone has got to deal with this problem, that they're going to be here for a while, but not forever. And they're getting older, and along the way you get sickness and injury and problems, physical problems as well. That's just your standard human birth. Obviously some people have worse things than others, worse experiences than others, but a standard human birth is part of the package. It's old age, sickness and death. And then on top of that, humans go and create all kinds of other additional and extra problems, don't they? It's already bad enough having to face old age, sickness and death. And, what are you going to do about that? Are you ready for it? Because we don't know when we're going to die. You could say, well, I'm doing my best to not get old. I put on my anti-aging cream and I wear my the clothes that make me look youngest, and I do all these activities to make me feel young. Or you can do all that. But in the end, you still have to get old and get sick and die. You still have to face that. But then we make all these additional problems in the world. We have arguments and disagreements, and we compete with each other for land and money and resources and fame and fortune and power and all of this stuff that human beings compete for and fight over. And we even fight over just our views and opinions about what is right and wrong, and who's doing it the right way, who's doing it the wrong way. This is all on top of the fact that we have to face old age, sickness and death every day anyway. So if you were that alien coming down to Earth for the first time and having a look at Earthlings, all these beings living in the Earth, and saying, oh, these guys, they're like us. They get old, they get sick, and they have to face death, because that's the nature of sentient life. But before they've even got to the point where they're facing old age, sickness and death, they're already starting wars and fighting and arguing and causing all kinds of trouble for themselves, for others. Sometimes we just fight it within our own head, in our own life, in our own person. We are not happy within ourselves. So we turn on ourselves and do all kinds of things that harm ourselves, bad habits and harmful habits maybe. But more often we're causing trouble with other people. Even the people we love, we cause trouble with, don't we? You live with someone, it could be husband and wife, parents and children, brother and sister, friends. We still argue, we still fight. Sometimes we fight more with the people we love than the people we don't. So it's a funny old world, isn't it? For the alien coming down, they say, oh, these human beings, they've got to deal with aging, sickness and death already, and yet they're making it worse by having wars and arguments and disputes and making a mess of things. So it wouldn't be strange if they kind of looked at us a bit strangely, like we're crazy. And maybe it's like that when you practice meditation as well. When your mind does settle down a bit and calm down as you practice mindfulness, and you look back at yourself first and then out to the world, it can look like a crazy place, because you realize we're already facing all kinds of challenges as human beings. You're just learning to live in the world, make a living first of all, and then make a living and live successfully, peacefully in our whichever society or place we live. There's already quite a lot of challenges, and then we make it worse by getting caught into arguments, and instead of acting together harmoniously, being friendly, cooperative, listening to each other, trying to understand each other better, often we end up just competing with each other or even fighting each other. So often we don't realize where all the suffering is coming from until we turn our attention backwards, and that's why the Buddha said, reflect on your life, reflect on what's going on, particularly learn to look at your own mind. So really the real problem, or the area we can fix our life, I'd say, is in your own mind first. If each person is doing that for themselves, then there's a chance we can live together more peacefully, more successfully. But we have to take that interest. So sometimes people say, if you're spending time meditating, even if you just sit down for 10 minutes, they'll say, what good are you doing for the world? The world needs all kinds of people to go out and help. There's sick people, poor people, there's conflicts to resolve, there's all kinds of things we need to do to improve humanity, research, and we have to solve all kinds of problems in the world, which is true. There's many things. So what good are you doing if you just sit down to meditate every day or once in a while, or you go on a meditation retreat? What good are you doing? Well, the first thing is you're learning just to pay attention, bring your mind, your attention back to yourself. And maybe you can see where quite often we make things worse just through our uncontrollable states of mind that we get caught into, worries, anger, desires that are not met. So we have lots of frustration when we don't get our desires satisfied. We have expectations not always met. If we never pay much attention to our mind, we miss all that, and we often attribute all the suffering of the world to other people, other groups of people, external things. But when you start meditating, you're turning your attention back, developing more mindfulness and this ability to look back or observe yourself. One thing you'll notice probably is that a lot of stress and suffering in life, we do it to ourselves. We create it ourselves by simply attaching to a lot of unskillful, unhelpful, negative thoughts, foolish thoughts, harmful thoughts in different ways, different intentions, different moods that come up. And not only attaching to thoughts, but thought leads on to speech, to action. So often the things we say and do are not coming from a place of clarity and wisdom. Often they're coming just from negative reactions to things, as we know, what we call stress. And when you're stressed, you tend to be attaching to a lot of negative thoughts. You may feel uncomfortable in your body, so some kinds of stress are prompted by you feel tired or ill or have some kind of physical pain. But then the real stress is what you think about these things, isn't it? How your mind starts to race and get caught up into different desires, negative desires, what you like or want, and maybe frustrated because you haven't got it, or what you don't want and what you want to get rid of. When you start to turn your attention backwards on and observe this, you realize, suffering is largely created in the mind by not being so aware of what's going on. And that means if you do practice some mindfulness and awareness and reflect on what's going on in your mind, you can change suffering, a lot of your suffering, and change your state of mind for the better quite quickly too. I was just teaching a meditation retreat last week in Thailand, and probably the number one obstacle people said they had was just endless mental agitation. They were doing many hours of sitting and walking meditation every day, and they said the most common problem they face was just the mind is just agitated, always worrying about things, sometimes regretting things that they've said and done in the past, so stuff that's already happened but worrying about it or bringing it up again, or worries and concerns about the future, what's going to happen, whether it's related to their health, their family, their work, the world, endless worries and concerns about the future. But in short, what we call mental agitation. Restlessness, agitation, anxieties, worries, coming up all the time. And a feeling of helplessness. What can I do with this mind that won't settle down? But a few people, hopefully quite a few people on that retreat, came to the conclusion, well, the first thing is just to try and accept it. Because what we tend to do when we meditate, start looking at our mind, is when we see things we don't like or are not very peaceful, we tend to immediately label that as bad, something to get rid of. So, I'm thinking too much, get rid of this. Or I'm agitated or worried, get rid of this. Which tends to make it worse, doesn't it? The more you want to get rid of something, generally, the more you feed it, the more it comes up, the more importance you give to it, the worse it becomes. So sometimes the first thing you have to do is just accept it. Yeah, my mind is not particularly well trained. I'm not always very mindful. I'm not always clear or conscious of what's going on in my mind, and just to accept that as your starting point. I mean, that's why we meditate. Often you hear people say, I can't meditate because I think too much. Well, it's because you think too much that you should meditate. We get it all wrong, don't we? We shoot ourselves in the foot before we've even started. But getting an attitude of maybe well-wishing for yourself, some compassion for yourself, say, okay, yeah, I am thinking a lot. I'm worried about this problem, that problem. My mind is not at ease, not restful. But accepting that and having a compassionate attitude to say, let's see what we can learn from this, what we can work from this, work out from this, maybe get some more understanding, some insight. So often the starting point in Buddhism, training your mind, developing your mind, has to come from a place of compassion. Realizing not only do we have these problems of aging, sickness and death, but also just an untrained mind that brings us lots of stress. You understand that, you accept that, and then you have an attitude of compassion for yourself as a human being. And of course, the more you understand yourself, the more you can understand other people, and you might realize they're probably in much the same position. If I get worried a lot, they probably get worried a lot. If I'm stressed, they're probably stressed. Because so much of our human experience is actually similar. Even if we do look different, talk different, have different hobbies or whatever, actually the similarities are there as well, and they're often very strong, very clear once you pay attention to them. So developing an attitude of kindness, compassion, and then meditating from that and accepting, my mind is not particularly peaceful. I worry, I get agitated, I'm anxious about things. But then seeing what you can learn from it. You're having an attitude of curiosity. So compassion is one part of the practice. The curiosity is the desire or the interest to learn from one's experience and to gain some understanding, some insight. So curiosity, in the case of an agitated mind, restless mind, you have to keep watching and learning. So you also have to be very patient and accept that. It may take some time. And that's why regular practice of meditation, listening to Dhamma can help you. So you're willing to take some time, but see what you can learn from this restless mind that you're having to deal with, if that's your main problem, and I think it is for everyone. And the one thing probably that you can learn quite quickly is that however restless, agitated your mind is, it begins, that restlessness begins, and then it ends or it changes. There are periods when you're very restless, periods when you're sort of moderately restless, and there'll be periods maybe when your mind is actually quite still and calm, content, or just not bothered by much at all. But often we don't notice them, especially if you're of the thought, I should have a mind that is perfectly peaceful, clear, bright, mindful, which again is often how meditators perceive what they should be doing. And they set these high ideals and they have these thoughts, I should be a certain way. So when the mind is restless, agitated, then they get upset with themselves and maybe turn on themselves or say, I can't do it. But actually you might notice if the more you practice mindfulness and reflect on things, and I don't just mean when you're meditating, it could be at any time of day or night, there may be times when you are actually not particularly restless or agitated. It's just you don't notice. or you didn't give a lot of importance to those moments. They might kind of slip by unnoticed. So as you practice mindfulness, that's one thing, it's one question to ask, and it's one thing to pay attention to. Are you really agitated all the time? Because often we think that, don't we? When we're agitated, we say, oh, every time I meditate, I'm agitated, I can't meditate, it's terrible, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really help. Often it makes it worse. But try to be as calm as you can, as steady as you can, and ask the question, is it like this all the time? Sometimes you also notice, well, I'm a little bit agitated, but not much. Or sometimes it's very extreme. The mind is a raging bull. But then there's other times when it's gone altogether. And if you're particularly worried about a certain issue, notice, ask yourself, how long will this last? Will it last all day? Or for 5 minutes? Or for 1 minute? Or for 10 seconds? These are questions you can use to just help you observe yourself better, understand what's going on. And already by paying attention to your mind, asking a few questions, having the curiosity, you get a certain separation between the mind that knows and then the thing that you're paying attention to, in this case, your agitated state of mind. And that gives you a bit of freedom, doesn't it? You say, oh, well, okay, I'm agitated, but now I know I'm agitated. That's already a little victory there. It's like something better than what you had before. And you realize, well, this agitation is there, maybe it will pass. And then you watch and see how long it takes before it does pass. Sometimes you can try other things. So some people, they try, like, say you're agitated about a particular problem, whatever it may be in your life or the world, but you deliberately bring that problem up into consciousness. Deliberately think it through. Make yourself as fully aware of that problem as you can. Because as you do that, sometimes you get a new perspective on it, a new insight, and you say, maybe this isn't as bad as I thought. Because the whole point is, when you're agitated, you tend to be not very mindful. It's sort of slipping by. You're half conscious and it's slipping by you. And it's not very pleasant. But if you deliberately start thinking about your particular problem, what am I going to do about this, whatever it may be, already it's kind of slowing things down a bit and making yourself more conscious of it. And that can help also to break it up and help it to end quicker. It's one way the Buddha talked about how you slow your thoughts down by making them kind of deliberate and you're making yourself very aware of whatever the subject, the issue is that's bothering you. He said it's like somebody is running and then they decide to walk, so they consciously slow down, or they're walking and they decide to stand still, or they're standing still and they decide to sit down, or they're sitting down, they decide to lie down. Consciously just slowing yourself down, and you can do that with thought as well. You got a train of thought racing through your mind. Just try to bring your attention to it, and you don't have to stop thinking whatever it is you're thinking, even if it's really silly or stupid, whatever, or aggressive, angry. But just try to consciously slow the words down so you really think it through, and maybe you find, I don't really need to think about this, all right? Maybe you've decided it's just not worth thinking about it and you can let it go, or you kind of undermine the power of it because you're now making it very conscious. The words, the feeling, you're becoming very conscious with it, and then it can dissolve much quicker than normal. What feeds our states of mental agitation is a lack of awareness and a lack of understanding what's going on, and particularly a lack of insight into impermanence. So, as soon as you introduce the idea of impermanence, this is not sure, this will change, and different ways that help show that to you by, say, just thinking the thoughts through more deliberately, putting gaps between your words and your sentences in your mind, noticing feelings arising, passing away, asking questions. How intense is this feeling of stress? You can do it in the scale 1 to 10. Is this a 5 or a 7 or a 10 or whatever? All these different techniques, and there are maybe many others as well. They can help you to just interrupt the flow of a particular mental state, make it more conscious to you, but introduce new ideas, mindfulness, awareness, a new perspective, and this sense of distance between your mind that knows and whatever the mood or the mental state is that you're experiencing, so that then it's not so unbearable or difficult. You can even do it with the thought, I can't bear this, I can't stand this anymore, because sometimes we get to that point in life when something's really bad and we go, oh, I can't stand this. And you can ask yourself, well, okay, I can't stand this. Now what? And what do I do next? Or can I stand it? I've just said to myself, I can't stand it, but can I stand it? Could I stand it? A very simple one is like when you're meditating, you maybe have some pain in your body, you feel tired, or you feel some pain and you say, I can't meditate anymore, I can't sit here anymore. Or it could even be when you're walking back and forth and you say, I can't walk anymore, too tired or whatever. You have the thought, I can't do this anymore. But then you say, okay, that thought has come up, but it's just a thought. It arises, it passes away. Now what? And you don't have to actually do anything. You just watch the thought arise, pass away, and you say, oh, maybe I can sit on a bit more because I'm not following that thought. So you watch and you observe, and okay, the cause of your problem, maybe the pain does continue, so sometimes it really is impossible to continue. You have to stop meditating or doing what you're doing. But sometimes you'll find that the thought just comes and goes, and you realize it was just a thought. So there's many different ways we can look at mental states of restlessness, agitation, strong desires, urges that come up. But we have to have that interest, the curiosity, the interest, the willingness to sort of look at stuff, question it, make the mind more mindful, pay more attention to it. And you may be pleasantly surprised. A lot of life is like this, just like the lady going into the forest, say, oh, it's so beautiful. You've never seen it before, never noticed it before. Or the man who heard a talk about the fact that we all have to get old, get sick and die. Or I never heard about that before, never thought about that before. Even your own mental states, when you bring up mindfulness and look at them, maybe you'll learn something that you never had seen before, and that can help you. So the Buddha always encouraged us to have an attitude of open mind, learning, try and understand things better, rather than just believe something and stick with a fixed belief, a fixed view in your mind, or just turn off and try and distract yourself always from things you don't like or problems. Perhaps a better way is to try and learn, to be curious, find out about things. And sometimes things are pleasantly surprising or easier than you think. Sometimes they're not, but you have to find that out, don't you? Rather than just follow your beliefs, your assumptions, which are often wrong. So there's a few thoughts on Buddhism and training this mind, particularly meditation, for tonight. I'll leave the talk there, but also after this we'll have a chance if anyone has any questions. I'll do my best to answer them.